Dark space. A broken satellite drifts slowly near Earth's orbit, silent and cold. Its solar panels are cracked. It's covered in space dust. Long ago, it carried messages, calls for help. Now, it just floats, forgotten. In the year 2275, Earth was in trouble. The air was growing hotter. Oceans were rising. Crops were dying. Wars had broken out over water and food. Fires burned across continents. Governments fell. People begged for help, not just from other nations, but from beyond the stars. Because years before, Earth had made contact with the Galactic Union, powerful alliance of alien civilizations spread across the galaxy. They had promised Earth peace, knowledge, and support. They had said humanity was now part of something greater, part of a united galaxy. But when Earth needed them most, no one came. Messages were sent day after day. Distress calls from world leaders, pleas from scientists, videos of starving children. The Union stayed silent. Not one ship returned. Not one message was answered. On the last day of Earth's final global government, the president made one final transmission. We were your allies. We stood by you and you left us. If anyone hears this, know that we will not forget. Then the signal went dark. Cities collapsed. Billions died. But not all hope was lost. In hidden places deep under the Arctic ice, inside abandoned lunar bunkers far beneath the Martian soil, a secret plan began. It was called Operation Phoenix. A small group of survivors, scientists, soldiers, and engineers gathered. They knew the Earth as it was couldn't survive, but they believed something stronger could rise from its ashes. Quietly, without sending a signal, they started building underground and in space, away from the satellites and sensors of the galaxy. They did not trust the stars anymore. The stars had turned their backs. These humans began forging a future without help. They gathered every piece of alien technology they had ever studied, every bit of data stolen, every crashed ship, every failed experiment. Nothing was wasted. Every child born into these secret cities was trained to build, fight, and survive. The world outside thought humanity was finished. The Galactic Union moved on, treating Earth like a failed experiment, a planet that couldn't make it, a species that had reached its limit. But underground, behind steel walls and under red Martian dust, humanity was becoming something else, something smarter, something stronger. They didn't want peace anymore. They wanted to be remembered. It took 100 years. Then 2. Generation after generation grew up inside bunkers and domes. They learned to build ships that could fly faster than light. They created weapons that could bend space. They built machines that could think for themselves, but never control their creators. 10 massive shipyards were hidden on the dark side of the moon. 20 more floated inside asteroid belts. Factories lit up the hollowed-out caves of Mars. In silence, the Earth's children prepared. 10,000 ships. 10,000 captains. One mission. They had no flags, no anthem, only a message that every pilot carried inside their mind. They forgot about us, but we never forgot them. The day finally came. The first Remindership stood ready, black armor, glowing red lights, armed with weapons never seen before. Its engines hummed like thunder. Inside, a pilot in her 20s closed her eyes and whispered the words taught to her since birth. They left my planet in darkness. I will return with fire. A countdown began. Outside, the red surface of Mars started to shake. The dust blew into the sky. One by one, hidden doors opened in the ground. Gigantic ships, silent for decades, rose slowly into orbit. Hundreds, then thousands. They did not speak to Earth. They did not wait for applause. No broadcasts, no flags, only silence. The humans on board were not going to ask for help ever again. They were going to remind the galaxy who they were. Above the dust and clouds of Mars, a satellite blinked for the first time in 200 years. A signal went out into the stars. It wasn't a cry for help, it was a warning. The camera pulls back. 10,000 ships now floating like a silent swarm, perfectly aligned, each one shaped like a dagger pointed at the sky. They had no interest in peace talks. They weren't looking for forgiveness. They didn't want to be welcomed back. They came to be remembered, because humanity didn't just survive, they evolved. Asterisk, the stars never watched Earth after the silence. Not once did the Galactic Union send a probe, a scout, or even a whisper. They believed Earth had fallen, burned itself out like a dying fire. In their eyes, humans were a weak species that cracked under pressure. They were wrong. While the galaxy moved on, Earth rebuilt not in the light, but in the shadows, beneath layers of stone, under frozen oceans and lifeless craters. The last survivors built the future in secret. It started with scraps pieces of alien tech, stolen from old crash sites, a broken energy core found in the Sahara, a cracked plasma rifle hidden in an Arctic vault, pieces that, alone, meant nothing. But together, they were a puzzle. And humans were always good at solving puzzles. Deep beneath the surface, engineers worked without rest. Scientists studied strange particles under the moon's crust. AI networks whispered to each other through frozen tunnels. They weren't building weapons not at first. They were building knowledge, quietly, carefully. They reverse-engineered what others thought was magic. They learned to power fusion cores. With almost no fuel, they made armor that could survive the pull of a black hole. They built engines that could fold space like paper. They called the new technology its tech, not because it was created with peace in mind, but because it was born in fire. It wasn't just science, it was revenge, forged into metal dot inside massive chambers under the moon's surface. Ship frames grew like skeletons of beasts. The walls of the caverns glowed red as molten steel poured into molds. Robots worked alongside human hands. The rhythm of hammers and machines never stopped. Every bolt, every panel, every wire was built with one message in mind. We were left behind. Now we rise alone. The first ship was called Ghost 1. It had no windows, no name painted on the side. It was invisible to radar and sensors. The only light it gave off was a soft red glow from its core. Its pilot was 17 years old. Her training started before she could walk. These new children born in darkness were not like the ones before. They were sharper, faster, raised without fear. Their history lessons were about betrayal, war, and survival. Their futures were planned before birth. They were called the Reminders, the first generation bred to reclaim Earth's place in the stars. Each reminder was given a single oath. Silence was their answer. Fire will be ours. They studied alien tactics, memorized every known species' weakness. Their minds were trained to think like warriors, scientists, and machines all at once. They didn't ask when they would leave. They only asked where the first strike would land. In orbit around Saturn, a factory the size of a city floated in darkness. No signals, no lights. But inside, the assembly lines never stopped. Ships were built faster than any alien species believed possible. Not copies of alien models, but something new. Something human. They didn't design fleets to defend Earth. They designed them to move across the stars like a storm. From Mercury to Neptune, hidden stations monitored space traffic. Anything that came too close was marked, tracked. If it got too close, it vanished, never reported, never found. The galaxy still believed Earth was silent. They had no idea. On the 200th year since Earth's last call for help, a final test began. A ship, unlike any before, was pulled from its dry dock. Sleek, sharp-edged, powered by a core so powerful it could light a city for a decade. The command center was silent. Dozens watched from behind black glass. On screen, the ship powered up. Lights flickered on along its hull. The engines rumbled. For the first time in generations, Earth's sky saw a streak of red tear into orbit. No alarms, no celebration, just a single log entry added to the archive. Remindership 001, launch successful. Below, in a small dome under Mars, the original founder of Operation Phoenix, now more machine than man, watched the stars through a cracked window. He whispered, "It's time." And far above, 10,000 ships began to wake. Inside each one, a pilot stood in silence, waiting for the order. No one spoke, no one moved, but every heart burned with the same thought. They left us to die. Now we return not as victims, but as the storm. Far from Earth, across the edge of the galaxy, a planet made of glass and silver floated in the light of 3 suns. This was Erythnine, home of the Galactic Council. It was a place where war had not touched the ground in 5,000 years. The skies were clean, the buildings reached into the clouds, and deep in the central tower, alien voices filled a grand hall made of crystal. Representatives from 50 species sat in a perfect circle. They argued in slow, careful tones. Some floated, some hissed, some blinked with eyes that saw more than color or light. But today's meeting wasn't about war or peace. It was about a small, forgotten planet that someone dared to bring up again. Earth, said a soft voice from the corner. It belonged to a thin, blue-skinned ambassador named Doral. She cleared her throat and spoke again. There are signs of activity in the Sol system. Strange power readings. Movement near Mars. Laughter echoed through the hall. Earth, said a tall creature with skin like polished stone. That dust rock, still trying to crawl out of the mud. Another joined in. They begged us for help and died in their own poison. We did them a favor by leaving. One by one, the council dismissed the idea. They spoke of humans as if they were insectly weak and long gone, but Doral didn't smile. She tapped a small crystal on her desk. A screen opened in the air, showing a series of recent data spikes near Jupiter. Heat patterns, engine trails. Something powerful was moving out there. Something large, silent. They're hiding something, she said. Or someone else is using their system as cover. The council leader, an ancient being whose body floated in liquid, waved a hand. Enough. The humans are gone. If something stirs in that system, we will send a drone. But no drone ever returned. 3 were sent. All vanished. Still, the council said nothing. Too busy with politics, treaties, and trade routes. Earth was a memory, not a threat. Back near the Sol system, a ship unlike anything ever seen by the Union drifted past the moons of Saturn. It was shaped like a blade, almost invisible. Inside, a human pilot watched data streams flash across her screen. She didn't speak. Her orders were simple. Observe, record, and vanish. She watched the drones fall, one by one. Their signals blinked out like candles in Windot far below. In a hidden listening station on Titan's surface, a group of humans monitored every galactic transmission. They didn't block them. They let the council laugh. Let them ignore the warnings. Let them think Earth was still broken, because the reminders wanted the galaxy to feel safe. To feel certain. That was the first part of the plan. Inside the main command hub under Mars, a silent alert lit up on every screen. Phase 2. Begin positioning. Across space, thousands of human ships began to move, slowly, quietly, like a storm, forming just beyond the horizon. Back in the council chamber, the mood was light. Jokes were made, some even toasted. One of them, a creature made entirely of light, smiled and said, "They should have stayed in the mud. The galaxy has no use for ghosts." But something changed suddenly. Across the council's private channel, a sound echoed through every device. A low pulse, not a voice, not words, just a deep, steady beat, like a heart. And then, one message appeared on every screen at once. "We never died." No one moved. The screen changed again. We waited. Council members stood up, their faces pale or pulsing with fear. We watched. In the silence, a final line appeared, burned into every terminal. "You forgot about us, but we remember everything." Doral stepped back. She turned toward the central leader and whispered, "They're not just alive, they're ready." Before anyone could respond, one of the outer defense stations around Erythnine went dark, then another, then 3 more. No alarms sounded, no warning. Just silence. One council member cried out, "What is this? Who is doing this?" And Doral answered, her voice low, "The humans, the ones we left behind." Far across space, inside Remindership 027, a pilot stared at a hologram of the council chamber. He whispered a message into his mic. "They think we're still weak. Let them laugh." Then he gave the order, "Mark the capital. Prepare to show them what Earth became." The ship turned toward the stars and vanished in a blink of red light. The council didn't know it yet, but the reminder had already begun. Far beyond the glowing towers of the Galactic Council, the stars shimmered calmly, unaware of the storm forming just beneath their surface. In the silence between planets, 27 moved like a shadow. Its hull absorbed light, its engines made no sound. Inside, the pilot sat alone, hands resting lightly on the controls. His name was Cass, born underground, trained in darkness, raised for this moment. He stared at the glowing red dot on his screen. Council Capital, ERITH-9. The heart of the Galactic Union. It had never been touched by war until now. Across dozens of systems, the human fleet activated. Ships that had slept in asteroid fields and lunar caves came to life. Signals pulsed between them like heartbeats. Not one transmission reached the Union's sensors. Earth's children had learned well. Silence was the greatest. Weapon. Cass opened his comms link to command. Visual confirmed. Defense grid is soft. No movement. Awaiting orders. A voice answered, calm female. Direct. Strike approved. Show them we remember. Cass pressed one button. The ship's front split open. A quiet hum filled the cabin. Inside the weapon bay, a sphere of red energy began to spin. Slow at first, then faster. The lights in the ship dimmed. Outside, a thin line of red light beamed toward Erythonine's outer station. Theta. The station never saw it coming. One moment, it was their ring of silver floating calmly above the planet. The next, it was gone. No explosion, no debris, just silence. Inside the council chamber, alarms began to blare for the first time in 5 centuries. Someone shouted, "Theta station just went offline." Another voice followed, trembling. There was no impact, no warning. It vanished. Panic spread through the room like fire. Members ran to private comms, trying to call homeworlds, trying to reach fleets, but it was too late. Lines were already jammed. Satellites were blind. Defense beacons refused to answer. Someone whispered, "This is impossible." But it wasn'. That was human. On Mars, deep inside the command chamber, rows of screens showed live data from the attack. The old commander stood in silence, watching the red pulse fade from Theta's coordinates. Around him, officers worked quickly, feeding commands to the fleet. Reminderships 031 through 050. Ready strike runs. Targets locked. Orbital blackout. In effect, across 17 sectors, confirming council movement. They're running scared. The old man spoke at last, his voice soft but steady. "We were forgotten. Let them remember us now." Back near Erythnine, council defense ships scrambled from their bays. Silver cruisers and glowing drones rushed into orbit, forming a shield around the planet. Cass watched from a distance. He didn't fire again. Not yet. His job was done. He whispered into his mic, "Let them see what's coming." And then he vanished. One by one, across multiple systems, reminder ships began to strike. Quick, clean, quiet. Communications hubs went dark. Energy relays failed. Nothing dramatic, nothing noisy, just precision. Perfect aim. Every ship hit once, then vanished like smoke. It was never about damage. It was about fear. In the council chamber, the chaos grew worse. "This is coordinated. They knew our blind spots. How? Where is this coming from?" Only the blue-skinned ambassador stayed calm. She turned to the council leader and said one word, "Humans." He stared back, frozen. "They were never gone," she said. "They were waiting." Across the stars, more ships left hiding. Thousands now, all still moving without being seen, like ghosts in the dark. In the Procyon sector, a convoy of Union supply ships was cut off. In the Tau grid, 3 council warships were surrounded and left untouched, just circled, observed. Psychological warfare. Humans had learned it well. No one could track them, no one could speak to them, but every strike left behind the same digital message. They forgot about us. So we brought 10,000 ships to remind them. The galaxy was listening now. On a distant moon near the edge of the council territories, a small boy looked up at the stars. He pointed to a red glow in the sky, brighter than anything he'd seen before. His mother pulled him inside, locking the door behind them. She didn't know what was coming, but she could feel it in her bones. War was no longer a distant thing. The humans had returned, not as allies, not as beggars, as a force of nature. They didn't shout, they didn't ask, they struck once and let the silence do the rest. And now the council, so sure of their power, so proud of their peace, had to face a truth they never prepared for. They weren't alone anymore, and the ones they left behind were no longer the same. The war hadn't begun, not officially, no declarations, no invasions, but across the galaxy, fear moved faster than any ship. On planets where humans had once begged for help, strange signals started to appear, low-frequency pulses, repeating tones. Some said they were warnings, others said they were invitations, but every message ended the same way, an old Earth phrase lost to time. "We are still here." On the mining world of Culture 3, an engineer working the night shift picked up a strange ping on his console. He ran diagnostics. Nothing made sense. The signal wasn't local. It wasn't from any known species, and yet it felt familiar. He boosted the signal and heard a whisper. A human voice, not loud, not angry, just calm, confident. We waited. You looked away. Now you look again. Then silence. He backed away from the console, heart racing. Coulter 3 hadn't seen a human in over 100 years, but he knew what he heard. He wasn't the only one. Similar reports came from old fringe colonies, places abandoned when the Council stopped answering Earth's distress calls. On lost worlds, long thought dead, power grids came online. Satellite dishes turned beacons, lit up across star systems that hadn't glowed in decades. The whispers of Earth had begun. In hidden Council bases, analysts worked through the night. They mapped the pattern of appearances. They tried to decode the purpose. They found no logic, no demand, just presence. As if humanity wasn't trying to speak to the galaxy, but haunted. One senior advisor, pale and shaking, stood before the Council leader and said, "This isn't warfare, it's something else. They want us to feel it first." The Council leader stared out a window at the empty space beyond. 1,000 alien worlds, all suddenly feeling very small. On the far side of the galaxy, in a deep space repair yard, a young soldier sat on a crate, cleaning a rifle. His unit had been called into emergency status, but no one told them why. His commander only said one word: humans. He didn't laugh, he didn't scoff, he just nodded. Everyone had heard the rumors about the reminders, about Earth's return, but this soldier had grown up thinking humans were a failed species, emotional, chaotic, weak. Now he wasn't so sure. Back near Saturn's rings, a reminder ship glided between ice fragments, silently listening. Its sensors picked up a dozen enemy patrols but did nothing. Its mission wasn't to fight. Not yet. It was to make them feel watched. The pilot inside watched old videos on a small screen. Footage of Earth, from before the silence. Cities, oceans, children playing in green parks. A planet full of life, forgotten by the galaxy. She turned the screen off and whispered, "We were never weak. We just remembered too late." The rest of the fleet remained hidden, perfectly still. 10,000 ships across thousands of miles ready, but waiting. It wasn't time yet. The galaxy wasn't afraid enough. Not yet. On the artificial moon of Telrose Prime, the Council gathered again. The room was quiet. No laughter now, no jokes, just silence and flickering lights. They all saw the reports. They all heard the messages. Some tried to deny it. Others whispered plans of surrender. But Doral stood at the center and spoke clearly. "They tried to warn us. The pulses, the messages, this is their way of speaking. They're not asking for peace. They're asking if we remember what we did." Someone replied, "We didn't do anything. We just left." And she answered, "Exactly." Outside, in the cold dark of space, human probes flew silently over once abandoned colonies, not to conquer, not to destroy, just to show they could. One probe hovered above a Council communications satellite. It didn't jam it, didn't damage it. It simply broadcasted a single image, a flag, Earth's flag, burned, torn but still flying, and beneath it, 3 words: "You left us." In that moment, 1 billion beings across the galaxy saw it. On ships, on planets, on personal devices, every screen flashed the message for exactly 5 seconds. Then black dot, nothing dot, silence. Again, the whispers had become a voice, a steady, patient voice that didn't scream or rage, but reminded. On Earth, the skies were dark, the oceans calm, underground. Cities thrived beneath the ruined continents. The air was thick with purpose. Every child trained, every machine built, every ship prepared. They didn't celebrate the fear. Spreading across the stars, they studied it, measured it, and waited for the moment the galaxy would stop laughing and start listening. Because Earth had already decided there would be no surrender, no negotiation. Only the next phase, and it was coming soon. The warnings were over. No more quiet signals, no more whispers, no more shadows drifting in silence. Across the galaxy, the human fleet moved into position. 10,000 ships, each one built in secret. Each one faster, smarter, and stronger than anything the Council had ever seen spread across space like a storm without wind. They didn't flash lights. They didn't raise banners. They didn't ask questions. They just appeared. Over mining colonies, above research stations, near trade routes, once guarded by the Union's finest. And everywhere they showed up, something simple happened. Everything stopped. Communications froze. Fleets halted. Satellites went dark. Then the reminder ships vanished before anyone could respond. The galaxy wasn't being attacked, it was being surrounded. In the capital world of Earth-9, panic was no longer hidden. Council members shouted across the chamber. Security forces tripled around the tower. But the truth settled in like cold air. The humans weren't hiding anymore, and they weren't afraid. Dorel, the blue-skinned ambassador who had warned them from the start, stood in silence as the council argued. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. Every prediction she made had come true. She had watched the galaxy ignore Earth. She had watched the laughter, now she watched the fear. One council member slammed his fist on the table. "We should have wiped them out when we had the chance." Another shouted back, "We left them to die. We gave up on them." Dorel finally spoke. "They gave up on us first." Her words cut through the room. No one argued, because somewhere deep inside, they all knew this wasn't about territory or control. It wasn't about war in the traditional sense. It was about memory, about being forgotten, about revenge without rage. Outside, in the vast black of space, a reminder ship hovered over the military outpost of Lurian 6. The base had been silent since the human ship appeared. Soldiers stayed inside. Defense cannons pointed upward, locked, but unused. Then, without warning, every screen inside the base lit up. A message, no voice, just text. "This is your final moment of peace." The ship didn't fire. It didn't land. It simply turned and vanished. Moments later, every defense satellite around Lurian 6 shut down. No explosion, no damage, just gone. Disarmed with surgical precision, the message was clear. If humans wanted to take, they could, but they weren't taking. Not yet. They were reminding, and with every second, the galaxy remembered a little more. In a control bunker under Mars, the human commander stood in front of a wide screen, showing live feeds from a dozen sectors. Ships in place, signals received, targets marked. His hands were behind his back, his face calm. They rattled. He turned toward her soon, but not all at once. Then, he pointed to the center of the galaxy map. Earth-9. That's where it begins. Back in council space, families watched skies that now carried unfamiliar shapes. Rumors spread fast: ghost ships, vanishing fleets, silent attacks. Children asked questions their parents couldn't answer. On a transport station above Telrose Prime, a merchant ship refused to leave dock after spotting a reminder ship near the upper orbit. The crew locked the doors and waited. No one dared move. The human ship didn't fire. It didn't speak. It just stayed. For 6 hours, then it left, without a sound, and still. The message burned in everyone's mind. "We're here. We see you. We haven't forgotten." Across the galaxy, old files were being opened again. Council archives, Earth history, reports long buried. They began to study what humanity had become, and what they found terrified them. A species that had lived through extinction, betrayal, famine, and silence. A people who had been left behind, only to rise stronger, colder, and more united than ever. No longer fighting among themselves. No longer asking for help, just remembering and preparing. Inside Remindership 001, the oldest and largest of the fleet, a group of Earth's leaders met in silence. No lights, no noise, just one screen in front of them showing every council world in perfect detail. The man at the center leaned forward. "They'll expect us to strike the fleets." He tapped the screen, zooming in on communication hubs. "We strike their voice." He tapped again, and then their memory. The others nodded. No cheers, no applause. Just understanding. Because this was never a war of weapons. It was a war of presence, of silence louder than explosions. And now, with the galaxy surrounded, the council trapped by its own pride, and every signal carefully cut or watched, one final message was prepared. The last reminder before everything changed. A single sentence, ready to echo across every system, every station, every planet. No more warnings. The galaxy had gone quiet. No trade ships in motion. No patrols in orbit. No council messages across the networks. Just silence. Every system that once claimed control now waited in the shadow of ships they couldn't stop, couldn't trace, and no longer dared to chase. The reminder ships didn't hide. Anymore they floated in plain view, calm, still, watching. On Earth-9, the council's capital world, fear wasn't a rumor anymore, it was routine. The sky above the city shimmered with static. A defense field stretched from pole to pole. Military ships circled low, scanning for movement. And then, without warning, it all shut off. In a blink. Every sensor, every satellite, every scanner turned dark. The sky fell silent, and a shadow passed overhead. A single Remindership entered the atmosphere, slow, massive, and silent as death. It didn't fire, it didn't land, it just hovered, like a question the galaxy didn't want to answer. Inside, council chambers, alarms screamed, leaders shouted orders, panic flooded the halls, but none of it mattered, because this time, the humans weren't sending a warning, they were sending a message. In the skies of Earth-9, across giant screens once used for celebrations, a broadcast began. Not a voice, not a face. Just images that showed Earth, burned cities, flooded coastlines. Children with ash on their cheeks, staring up at ships that never came. Then came the council records, old transmissions, denials, delays. The moment the galaxy looked away, and finally the rebirth. Underground, cities lit by fire and code, fleets rising from beneath red dust, a people left for dead, building quietly beneath the stars. Then the screen turned black, and a single sentence appeared in white. Now you remember. Across the galaxy, every screen showed the same thing. From the icy rings of Verdanus to the floating colonies of Nuria, everyone saw it, everyone felt it. The council didn't speak. They had no words, because there was nothing left to deny. The humans hadn't come for conquest. They came to be remembered. On a research base near the edge of known space, a young officer watched the broadcast in silence. She'd been told all her life that humans were emotional, unstable, outdated. Now she saw the truth. They were focused, calculated, relentless, and very patient. She turned to her commander. What do we do? He didn't answer, because there was nothing left to do. In deep space, the human fleet moved as one for the first time. 10,000 ships, once scattered in silence, now formed a single wall of light and metal. They didn't fire weapons, they didn't need to. The message had landed harder than any missile, and still there was no voice, no broadcast, no terms, just presence. Every council system was now under quiet watch. Every outpost scanned, every relay tapped. The humans didn't occupy, they observed, they reminded. In the lower chambers of Mars Command, the Earth's general watched from a darkened room. No lights, just screens. His officers stood behind him, quiet. It's done, one of them whispered. He shook his head. No, this is just the memory. The real work begins now. Someone asked, will they strike back? Maybe, he said, but not before thinking twice. He stood, walking toward the large window that faced the stars. They forgot we were human, he said, but we didn't. Somewhere in the outer rim, a child looked up from a quiet moon and saw a glowing dot in the sky's soft, unmoving, distant. He asked his father, what is that? The father paused, watching the light. That's a reminder, he said, that someone is always watching. For the first time in centuries, the galaxy felt small, not because it was shrinking, but because something inside it had grown. Earth was no longer silent, no longer waiting, and the stars would never forget again, because the message was clear. They had been left, but now they were everywhere, and no one would ever forget them again.